Okay, so we've seen in the lesson of the subjunctive, we saw in what cases we use subjunctive, and specifically most of the examples given were in present subjunctive. Now we need to look at how do we construct that present subjunctive, okay? What forms, what endings do we use for the present subjunctive? And you will see that here, I've got here these three verb tables. These three verb tables are three verb tables of the present, but not the present subjunctive. These are from the present indicative, what some people will call the normal present. Yeah, the present indicative. And I've got here the verb hablar, to speak, the verb comer, to eat, and the verb vivir, to live. Yeah, so here I've got hablo, that would be I speak, you speak, he or she speaks, I eat, he or she eats, we eat, they eat, they leave, they live. Oh, I'm having trouble with these vowels, etc. Now, why have I put here the endings of the present indicative? The reason we have done that is because we need them in order to construct the present subjunctive. If we know our present indicative well, building the present subjunctive is easy peasy. Okay, so if you remember, we've got three different sets of endings in the present indicative. Yeah, these three different sets of endings. One set for the AR verbs, another set for the ER verbs. So notice that these endings are slightly different from these endings, even though the I form always ends in O. Yeah, and a different set of endings for the IR verbs. Now, what happens with the present subjunctive, okay, is very interesting. Look at this. I'm going to put here, okay, I'm going to show you here how we do the verb, these three verbs. Okay, so it's the same three verbs. We've got them up here. We've got them up here in the present indicative. Now we're going to look at the present subjunctive of the verb hablar. So the first form for the I, okay, notice that here in the present indicative, the general trend is to have an A. Yeah, because it's an AR verb. Now for the I form in the present subjunctive, so that's that I speak, okay, so I would use it in sentences like me pide que hable, okay, so he or she asks me to speak, okay, so it's que yo hable, so okay, so it adds an I, hable. Tú hables. Okay, this should be familiar. If you look here, okay, hables. Que él, ella hable. Notice here. Que nosotros hablemos. Notice here. Que vosotros habléis. Notice here. Y que vosotros, que ustedes o ellos hablen. Look at this. So what's happened here, that other than in this first form, okay, other than in the I form, the endings of the present indicative of the ER verbs are used for the AR verbs, okay, other than in this top one. And then what do you think may happen with the ER verbs? I'll give you a clue. So that I eat would be in Spanish que yo coma. Okay, so if this is an A, what's going to happen? Exactly, I'm going to take these endings and put them here. So it's going to be que yo coma, que tú comas, que él, ella coma, que nosotros comamos, que vosotros comáis, que ellos coman. Okay, and what happens with vivir? What happens with the IR endings? Well, exactly the same as with the ER endings, same endings as hablar. Okay, so que yo viva, que tú vivas, que él o ella viva, que nosotros vivamos, que vosotros viváis, que ellos vivan. Okay, and that's it. So pretty easy really in terms of endings. So let's have a look at a couple of examples. Okay, a couple of examples of this present subjunctive in a sentence. So if I want to say in Spanish, for example, it is important it is important that we wait. Okay, it is important that we wait. Notice that this "it is important that" is one of the expressions that in Spanish require subjunctive. Okay, and in Spanish this expression is es importante que. Okay, now I need the "we wait." Okay, that we wait. First of all, I'm going to try and remember what is it to wait. To wait es esperar, okay, esperar, and notice that it's an AR verb. Therefore, I'm going to have to look here, okay, at these endings, and it's that we wait, so I'm going to need this, okay, so it's not going to be hablemos, in this case it's going to be esperemos, okay, so es importante que esperemos. Okay, another example. Let's hope that they write soon. Okay, let's hope that they write soon. Again, this "let's hope that" is one of those expressions that in Spanish requires present subjunctive. We can also use imperfect subjunctive, and in this case we're looking at the present subjunctive. So this is ojalá, okay, ojalá, or ojalá que. The que is often optional. So ojalá que, if you remember, soon is the word pronto, okay, and now I need the "that they write." So to write is escribir, is to write, so it's an IR ending. I'm going to have to look at these endings, and what I need is the "they write," so I'm going to need this ending, so it's going to be escrib, get rid of IR, and in its place add AN. Okay, so ojalá que escriban pronto, and that's it. Okay, so the main thing about the present subjunctive, the trickiest thing about the present subjunctive, sorry, is to remember when to use it, to remember what type of expressions it follows, and to remember that it expresses hypothetical things that haven't happened, things that may or may not happen in the future. Okay, now before finishing, a couple of things important to remember. Like all of the different tenses, there are, in the present subjunctive, there are unfortunately some irregular verbs. And let's have a look at what these irregular verbs. You will see that many of these verbs are what we could call the usual suspects, are some of the verbs that they tend to be irregulars. Okay, they tend to be irregular verbs in many other tenses. So we have the verb here. We have the verb tener, which remember is to have. Okay, and in the I form, the tenga. Okay, so similar to the I form for the indicative present, which is tengo, and then notice that, okay, this first form is irregular because it's not tena, okay, it's tenga, but then all the other forms, they follow this same irregular stem. It follows the same stem, and all the endings are perfectly regular. Okay, the same with venir. Okay, venir, the first person is venga, so notice that it's irregular in relation to the infinitive, but then all the other forms also do venga, venga. So just repeat this stem, and the endings are perfectly regular. Haber, same things. By the way, venir is to come. Haber is to have, but it's that to have that it's an auxiliary. It doesn't mean to own something. It's what you're using. For example, I have danced. Okay, it's that have. So the first person, that I have, is haya, and then all the others follow the same stem and add the regular endings. Same happens with saber, which means to know. So sepa, and then the others follow the same stem, and then ser, as we know, is to be, and that cerdas sea, and then the others follow sea, perfectly regular pattern. Okay, now if we look at these ones here at the bottom, they're 2a verbs. They're the verbs dar, which is to give, and estar, which is to be, is the other verb to be. Remember, this one is for more changeable things or to being in one place. And these, they what happens with these is that the endings are a little bit irregular. Okay, if you notice, this and this ending is a little bit irregular, and here it's the same, and here estén takes an accent. Okay, so these, you need to remember these endings. The best way of learning and remembering that these are irregulars is by maybe by remembering a couple of sentences. Okay, so for example, I don't know, you could make up the sentence ojalá esté en la fiesta. Ojalá esté en la fiesta. Ojalá esté en la fiesta. I hope he's at the party. I hope he's at the party, or I hope she's at the party. Ojalá esté en la fiesta. And then that starts ringing. Okay, starts ringing esté. Okay, so if he or she is esté, I is also esté, and then it follows the same pattern. Okay, so the key sometimes to learning these irregulars is to learn one sentence with one of the forms, especially because they are, once you know the one of the forms, like the I form, all the others follow the same pattern. So once you sort of have learned a sentence that contains that, then it will be relatively easy to then be able to make all the rest. Okay, but yeah, and these are very common verbs. So although at the beginning you may be a little bit hesitant to use them because they're so common, you will find yourself needing to use them. Okay, and from here you will see how then you just start using them, and that's it really. Okay. And then the second thing that you need to bear in mind, is about bood verbs. Bood verbs, or stem changing. Okay, stem changing verbs. If you remember, if you remember these, were things like verbs like cerrar. Okay, cerrar, to close. In the present indicative, it did yo cierro, I close, tú cierras, you close, he or she cierra, he or she closes, nosotros, we cerramos, vosotros, you guys cerráis, y ellos, they cierran. And if you remember, we called them bood verbs because, well, these verbs, if you've noticed, they've got some forms, although the infinitive is cerrar with an e. In these three forms, I, you, he, she, and we, and they, they have this I that crops up, while in the nosotros and vosotros forms, this doesn't happen. And because the form this takes, when I put them like this, is the form of a bird. Okay, this is, it's a thing that can help us remember where the irregularities happen. Okay, now why am I talking about these? Because these verbs that have these bood verbs, these stem changing verbs that suffer these in the present indicative of the verb, the same exactly happens in the present subjunctive. Okay, so if I wanted to say that I close, using the subjunctive would be yo cierre. Okay, that you close, que tú cierres. That he or she closes, que él cierre. That we close, que I crossed the wrong vowel, que cerremos, que cerréis, and que ellos cierren. Okay, but notice that this irregularity stays exactly the same. Okay, so bood verbs continue to behave exactly in the same way as in the present indicative. Okay, and of course, if you've forgotten what bood verbs are, if you've forgotten what stem changing verbs are, to go back to the present indicative lessons and have a look and remind yourself. Okay, so I hope the present subjunctive is clear, the formation, and I hope that you find this useful to really improve your writing especially, but of course also your speaking. See you later.